Good evening, everyone, and happy Thursday. We are live and we are not in the Ghost Biker Garage. We are here on location at the historic Scott County Jail, but this is the Ghost Biker Garage live here with your host, the Ghost Biker. And I have a great guest tonight. So before we get into that, I just want to say hello to a couple people over here in the audience and give everyone just a few minutes to get on. Hope everyone is having a great day. Like I said, we're here in the historic Scott County Jail. Got a whole lot going on, gearing up for February and Fall in Love with History Month. Got a lot of really great events going on here. Starts next weekend. We've got some special events that are history driven and then also some that are paranormal driven. If you guys have been watching my channel as well as the historic Scott County Jail page, we're talking about this really cool paranormal research study that we're conducting here that's going to go through the end of May. And so paranormal teams who book here as well as different people who maybe aren't part of a team but want to come and help us with our research study, they can do that. We've got that information on my page as well as on the historic Scott County Jail page, and then just through a bunch of groups on the page. And then we've also got Crimes of Passion flashlight tours every weekend here during the month of February. I think they're going to run every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night, and then also an opportunity to go on a ghost hunt with myself and my business partner and the founder of Soul Sisters Paranormal, Dr. Christy Sumner. So all of that information is on our site. So that's kind of the big stuff that we've had working on here. Just looking over here at the comments a little bit. Hey Dee, thank you so much for your question. Yep, we still have the season finale of season 4 that's going to be coming out very soon. I travel across the state every week to be here at the jail. So, and we've also had some really crazy weather. So that is still in production and filming on that. So hopefully soon we will have the season 4 finale of Ghost Biker Explorations. Say hello to a few other people here. Hey, Jessica, Janet, Joe, Dr. Sumner, thank you all so much for coming on. So I'm not going to waste any time because, my guest tonight, we really have a whole lot to talk about. And he is a Cleveland native and has a very interesting story to share. And if you guys know him, know his channel, you'll see that he actually has many interesting stories that he shares every week. So we're going to go ahead and get him on here. He is a vlogger and adventurer, and he's the dream poet. And he's been exploring the historical and paranormal for over 6 years. He's been featured on WBIR Channel 10 News, and he catalogs his stories on the Dream Poet YouTube channel. He has worked on the nationally acclaimed documentary, The Library That Dolly Built, and he lives in Cleveland, Tennessee with his family. So I'm going to go ahead and pull on Mr. Guthrie, the Dream Poet.
All right. Awesome. We're on.
Hey, thank you so much for coming on with me tonight.
Oh, no problem, Miranda. Glad I could. I was excited when you invited me.
Yeah, so I've been following your channel for a little while now. I guess probably around about a year, I think. And then really noticed it may have not quite been a year, but I've really noticed that you've been growing by leaps and bounds. So why don't you first tell us, about your channel, and then also tell us about how you got started.
Well, alrighty. It really all starts back when I was getting my degree in journalism at the University of Tennessee. Actually, it's this degree thing right there, the really expensive piece of paper right there. Anyway, throughout this process and getting my degree, I had a few friends that were starting a YouTube channel of their own. It was called Adventures United. Nathan King, John Galley of their names. Through with them, we constantly worked on it. We would go to these abandoned locations. We would occasionally do the paranormal. And it came to a point that after I graduated, I'll just say things weren't exactly going the best. Things have been patched up since then. This has been like 3 years. But I wasn't really having much success with my career. I wasn't really getting any callbacks, and it actually came to a point where I was living out of my truck, and I had to come home. Um, well, of course, that was Knoxville. But when I was back at my family's home in Cleveland, I really had a heart to heart with myself. I wanted to know where the next part of this journey would go. Um, like I said, it all started. I mean, I was done with school, I was free, single, I could go anywhere, do anything. Well, as I sat there, I thought, you know, I want to ignite my own passions. I want to create my own YouTube channel and build it from the ground up. And that's essentially what I did. And I took this idea and I said to myself, why don't I buy a sailboat and move to Florida? I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but I kind of got the idea from my stepfather. He lived on a boat for about 10 years before he met my mother. And I was like, it's Florida. This is going to be fun. So my friend and I, well, my friend Ben, he and I, we take a trip down to Florida. We do our search. I look at a couple of apartments. I was still kind of wishy washy on the idea of a sailboat, but my friend Ben, he pulls up a an ad on Craigslist, and it is a Cal 29 sailboat. It's a 30-foot sailboat for like $3,200. Um, for whatever reason, in my heart, and I don't like. It's one of those things that it just kind of hits you almost like a premonition, like it kind
Mhm.
of like smacks you in the back of the head, like, dummy, that's your boat. And and the entire trip that I was down there, I could not let go for the fact this is my boat. Yep, that's right there. I mean, actually, that's the day that I left it when I came back home. But 30-foot sailboat, and for the next 3 years, I called that sailboat home. Um, through my YouTube channel, I started oh, with the idea of logging 365 days. My first year living in Florida on my own. I made it to day 338, but then a very well known world catastrophe happened, COVID-19. And that really, really messed with my head, really kind of screwed with my mental health. And very briefly, I thought about coming back home, but I stuck to it. I kept on pushing. And, well, long story short, I started just vlogging once a week. All these little fun adventures I'd go to here and there. And it would range anywhere from seeing, the paranormal or exploring the paranormal in St. Augustine, Florida. I mean, as you know, that is, if I'm not mistaken, that is the number 6 most haunted location or city in the entire United States.
Yeah,
Like,
one of the oldest.
yep, 1565. How I know that is I was a ghost tour guide for about 7 months. It was fun. Um, but anyway, I just kind of, I mean, sometimes like I think probably one of my all-time favorite experiences that I ever did with my channel, and you can find it on the Dream Poet channel as well. But it's Silver Springs, Florida. It's not far from Ocala, but like no joke, the water is crystal clear. Like there's one spot that you can look 40 feet down and you can see straight to the bottom. I mean, well, why I bring that up is I kayaked with manatees, and that's one of the that's one of the things that I miss about living in Florida is seeing the floaty potatoes, as I call them. But really, I kind of stuck with my YouTube channel. I kept on pushing, And eventually my mental health caught up to me. I was like, it's time to come back home. My grandfather had passed away. My mom and my grandmother were not doing well. And I was like, yeah, it's time. So I came back up, and this is where I see this explosion of growth. Because when I was living in Florida, I mean, I was lucky to maybe even get like 4 likes on a video. But when I started doing things that, well, around here in Cleveland, Tennessee, things that I just, stories that I had grown up hearing, I would vlog it, I would put it on my channel, and I would watch it just literally explode. Um, I saw the first story around this. I did a video on the Tall Betsy legend, which is associated here in Cleveland. Tall Betsy, allegedly was a witch, or she would come at like 1920, 1926, 1928. People who would walk around, late in the middle of the night downtown Cleveland, they would spot this big, giant, tall black figure. And some of the story goes that she would steal the children and, take them to she'd take them up to her crypt. She would eat them, and then she would throw their bones or carcass or whatever in a well that was on Arnold School's property. Um, but anyway, going back to that, I just saw this explosion of, like I said, just stories that I had grown up hearing and stories that I thought, you know, people would not find this cool or interesting. But somehow, like, I made an exodus to move to Florida to start my channel, thinking that was where I was going to have the most success. But when I come back to Cleveland, it all, like, within like 5 months, I'm already up to like 700 subscribers almost.
Yeah,
Like,
and that's really cool. And sometimes that's what it takes is, kind of stepping away. I mean, because that's really impressive, to get out of school, because I know the industry that you were going into, it's a very competitive and challenging industry to
mhm.
get into. And it's to do that and to decide, okay, I'm going to go to Florida and really do a whole lifestyle change. I mean, that had to be a very uh, growing experience for you, and I think that it might have been challenging to have stepped into where you're at now if you hadn't have had that experience, in the
Yep.
growth. Um, because there in Florida, I mean, I'm sure there was a lot of different things to vlog about, especially with everything you were doing. And it's cool to see the transition from that to going and talking about the history and telling the different stories from Cleveland, because that's where I spend half of my week at is in Cleveland, and that's where I started with my channel as well, with the Bleeding Mausoleum. So Cleveland is not short on stories just in that entire area, whether they be local legends or actual history. It's quite an amazing area that a lot of people, I don't think they really know just how rich that history is.
Yep. Definitely. I mean, oh, what are you going to
No,
say?
no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, I feel like with Cleveland, Tennessee being like right next to Chattanooga, Chattanooga is, a hotbed, which follows into Atlanta. I feel like that's why Cleveland's kind of okay. Knoxville, mountains, oh, sweet water, and then comes down to Chattanooga. But yeah, I mean, Cleveland has so much history that it just aggravates me when you have my generation and younger say like, "There's nothing to do in Cleveland." No, there's a lot if you
There
look.
is a lot.
I mean, for example, my most recent blog that'll be going up tomorrow is Cleveland, Tennessee's involvement in the Civil War. I think people would probably say I'm crazy if I told them that there were about 20,000 Union troops camped out where the Hardwick Woolen Mill is now and further, because during the Civil War in Cleveland, the Julius Rott House was the command post for that entire Union regiment, which was from Indiana, by the way. But you know, the Rott House is also where the acclaimed rumor is of the Civil War tunnels.
Mm-hmm.
They say that down in the Rott's basement, it had a tunnel that led to the train depot. I have heard. I guess this is where it becomes muddled. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you talk to today's generation that are saying, oh, it's just a very intricate form of drainage tunnels.
Mm-hmm.
But if you talk to like the older generations that grew up in Cleveland, they will tell you that they could go to one particular entrance in their house and it would shoot them into a entirely different part of town. One big example of this is in Cleveland. There is a lawyer's office. I
Mm-hmm.
forgot I forgot the name of the lawyer's office, but how I know this story is it was a friend of mine that had made a comment on my Julius Rott video, and she told me that it was her our little life group project that she was working on, and one of the things that one of the people that owned the office, they would tell her and her people or her group that that opening in the basement, that's where people would go and hide when trouble would arise, kind of like during the
Like a
Civil
safe
War.
room. Yeah.
Yeah, safe room. Um, and they would come back out when it would be safe. Um, they believed that that was a part of the tunnel system. Um, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I've just heard like enough stories to say that this is an actual tunnel system. And
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the history, I mean, Julius Rott, he was the richest man in all of Tennessee at the time.
Yes.
I mean, he owned and operated the copper mines in Turtletown and Copper Hill. I mean, this man was very wealthy, very
Mm-hmm.
wealthy. Um, but going back to the whole Civil War thing, Cleveland, like downtown Cleveland especially, during the Civil War, there was a raid done by General Joseph Wheeler with the Confederate Army. Uh, this is what I found out, but when I believe his name was Horatio Gibson, I believe that's what his name was, Horatio Gibson. When he and his troops found out that General Joseph Wheeler was coming down into Cleveland, I think it was from the Knoxville location,
Mm-hmm.
what they did is they went to the highest point in Cleveland, which at the time it was called the city cemetery. The city cemetery will later be called Fort Hill
Fort
Cemetery.
Hill. Yeah.
And you have, darn it, you have two, not two, two, two makeshift forts. One of them is, oh darn it, Fort McPherson, and then you've also got Fort Sedgwood. I think that's what the other one was. But when General Joseph Wheeler comes to Cleveland, he sends Horatio Gibson a letter, and in the letter he states, "Do you intend on allowing me to quote unquote shell Cleveland?" Which, in other words, raiding Cleveland. Well, he sends him a message and says, "Do what you will." And like almost overnight, the entire city of Cleveland evacuates, like the entire city, and from then on, it's just absolutely destroyed. But in my vlog, that I also this is also kind of interesting. First Presbyterian Church is the oldest church in Cleveland. It was founded in 1837 during the Civil War and the Union occupation of the town. they were using First Presbyterian Church's sanctuary as a place where they would keep their livestock, as well as they would keep them where, well, the slaves were. But that's just that kind of thing right there.
And that's fascinating to me because, you not to take anything away from Gettysburg. I mean, amazing place, amazing history, but I feel like the South, as far as like Cleveland, Chattanooga, Chickamauga, I feel like those locations are overlooked a lot
Oh,
because
definitely.
obviously, Lincoln given his address and those speeches and everything, but just the skirmishes that happened and the battles that happened in the Cleveland, Charleston, Chattanooga, Chickamauga area, it's fascinating to me because there's so much history. There's a lot of the buildings still standing, a lot of the structures are still being used, and then also there are a lot of hauntings in those areas. So I
Oh,
often
definitely.
feel like, you
Yep.
know, I mean, I don't think they call Cleveland the city of spirit just because,
Hmm.
it's
Yep.
a happy place. I think it's you can feel it in the area. There are a ton of spirits and a ton of haunting stories. So I think it's an area that's overlooked, and I really appreciate what you've done by going and sharing this history, bringing the stories about the tunnels because you're right. There are a lot of people, and a lot of these stories, especially the ones the old timers tell, they if they're not shared, then they end up passing away with that person, and then there becomes a misconception in the community. Um, they don't know what these are, so they continue to say they're drainage lines or what have you. So I appreciate the research and the history that you put into your vlogs and the variety as well. I like the fact you do cover the local legends and the hauntings and the stories of that nature, but then you really go into a lot of the history and a lot of stories. Do you have a preference of what you like to do? Do you prefer the history or the mystery side of things?
Honestly, the mystery, but I mean, this is kind of where I'm caught between two different, two worlds. It maybe this is just my inner journalist. It's like I absolutely love history, but at the same time, I love the stories that science can't explain, history can't. It's just like nobody can explain it, and when it's in the history books, they just look at it like this can't be real.
Right.
Which actually kind of leads me to now this isn't so much Cleveland history, but I did mention it in the last podcast. Yes, I was in the comments as everybody else is doing right now. Um, but I asked, have oh, darn it, what was her name? Anyway, I forgot her name. Um,
When I had Jess Rogie on.
yep, Jess Rogie.
Yes.
Jess Rogie, and you were wondering what the Sugar Flat Monster, or pardon me, the Monster of Sugar Flat Road is.
Hmm.
And I believe I sent you a picture, or
I'm heading there now, actually. And while I'm pulling that up, we do have a question there in the comments from D Hoot. She asked, "Do you know what the current population of Cleveland is?"
actually, I do know this one, which is kind of weird.
I figured
Uh,
you.
I mean, the current populate, because I have looked at the Wikipedia several times now. Um, yeah, but anyway, a there's about 48 that like as of the 2020 census, there's about 48,000 people living in Cleveland currently. I,
And yeah, and it's interesting because, and I think all those people are on the roads on a Friday evening because it just in the 12 years that I've lived there in Cleveland, it's crazy just how much it's grown for one
mhm,
thing. I mean, I never go to Chattanooga anymore because it's grown so much and just all the people that's there now. It's amazing.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it has come. Well, I mean, maybe this is where I'm starting to kind of get like the local side. It's like, well, okay, well, I mean, I shouldn't talk about Lee. in a bad light, because there might be a few big wigs watching this, and so I have to say, oh, I like Lee University, but I mean, it's just like you get some of these kids that come down here, and it's just like, I'll just say their personalities are not grand or great, and they stay here. But anyway, I'm not going to be any more negative than that.
Well, as Susan says, they're all on Paul Huff Parkway.
Exactly.
I'm not joking when I say it's like I think all 95,000 of those people are on Paul Huff
Hmm.
Parkway on a Friday evening. Everybody's out eating and everybody is on the roads. So it is quite amazing because again, I'm not a native to the area. I'm from up here in Scott County, but have lived in Cleveland for 12 years, and just in that amount of time, because people that I talk to that have been natives, they talk about just the farmland, and I mean, you're what, several generation native to Cleveland, correct?
Yep. Speaking of farmland and property, Paul Huff Parkway, if you go and you look at James Asbury Drive or Burnham Drive, you go onto the older side of town. I heard my cat crying. Jojo. Anyway, as long as nobody can hear him out, I know he's not going to like it when I ignore him. But don't ignore your cat. But anyway, okay. But anyway, to get back to what I was saying, um, Burnham Drive, James Asbury Drive, that was the name of my great grandfather and my great grandmother. Where the Hardys is on Paw Huff Parkway, that's where my great grandfather's house stood.
Okay.
Now, that house, if you can believe it, still stands. When that when the interstate came through, they took my great grandfather's house, they dug it up, and they moved it about 5 miles down the road.
Okay.
I mean, it's not far from oh shucks, what's the name of that elementary school? Anyway, it'll come to me. But anyway, my family has a lot of pictures from around that time, and it's so weird to see farmland as far as the eye can see, and then seeing these big dozers that are just digging into the mountainside, which is, now a thoroughfare that everybody seems to cross all the time. Actually,
Yeah.
I saw somebody oh, what is it? Their propane grill. It slipped and it fell out of their truck and almost hit my rental vehicle.
Wow.
But anyway, that's my luck with cars. But
And I didn't mean to digress off that. I wanted to get to her comment or get her question
oh
before
oh
you had gotten to this. But as you were saying, this was the picture you were talking about, correct?
oh yes. Sorry, I mean sorry, my ADHD kicked in. But yes, this is the story of the Sugar Flat or the Sugar Flat Monster. Um, as a few people probably have been wondering or were wondering what it is, the story dates all the way back to about 1889 in Lebanon, Tennessee. Prior to this time, people would describe hearing these big, loud, unexplained noises and growls and roars coming at all hours of the night. And if they heard their dog bark or squeal or cats or anything, they knew that their animal was gone. They're not getting it back. They're going to find it dead at some point, and its innards will be ripped out. In the winter of 1989, it was January, there was a man and his girlfriend. He was trying to get his girlfriend back to her house. As the story goes, she was a married woman, married
Mhm.
woman. Anyway, affair, But anyway, he's trying to get her home. But as they're driving down Sugar Flat Road in the mountains just outside Lebanon, this big, giant white creature comes out of the bushes. He slams on his brakes. His brakes give out, and he runs straight
Wow.
into this creature. Um, this gentleman, he freaks out. He gets out of his truck, he sees this big, giant, ape-like creature. What he does is he goes and he pushes it in the ditch, and he throws leaves, brush, everything on it, and he drives off. As he gets back to his, as he gets back to his house, he's dropped his lady friend off. He's just kind of sitting by his fireplace. He's having a few drinks, as the story goes, and he just cannot let go of what he has just seen. So what he does in the early morning light, he gets back in his truck. He drives to this location on Sugar Flat Road, and he digs up the creature. Now, his plan is he is going to bury this creature. But before he does, he takes the sharp end of the shovel and he cuts the head off. And with the head, he takes it to a taxidermist. The taxidermist cannot believe what he is seeing. And that is how we have this picture right here. And the head of the Sugar Flat Road monster has, let me see, it was in an antique store for quite a long time. Then, if I'm not mistaken, it disappeared and it reappeared. It was bought by somebody in 2013 that actually, I think it was displayed in Chattanooga, which is kind of weird, kind of hits home.
Mm-hmm.
And then for a time, the head does disappear until it is rediscovered. It is purchased, and I've noticed that I think it's just a seasonal thing.
Okay.
But the Lebanon History Museum does show off the head and display it just during the Halloween season. How I know this is I was going to do a vlog on it, but then I looked at their social media, their Instagram, and he's like, oh, he's disappearing at the end of November or October. And I'm like, crap. Because it's just like this story is almost unheard of. And it's so fascinating, but there's only 2 decent videos on it out there, on YouTube, and that's the only thing I can find on it. But if you all want to try to find said person, there's a gift for you guys to sit in the Scott County Jail.
Nice.
I think you all should try to find that person.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I hadn't heard of it until you mentioned it. And you always hear about all kinds of different my study is mostly in the paranormal, not so much cryptids, but from the more people I've been talking to, I've been finding out about these stories kind of like this, and they're fascinating to me because they're not like your typical Sasquatch or typical ape man type story. They are specific to that area. Do they believe that this is some type of Sasquatch or some type of ape man?
As far as I've read, it's kind of split down the middle. Some people think it's a gaff, it's roadside attraction, it's like, oh, the head of Sasquatch. And then there are a lot of people who will say, yeah, it's real. And it kind of makes sense because it just looks real. I mean, like, for example, they do have gaff Sasquatch heads. It's like they take the backside of a white-tailed deer, and of course, they put the 2 beady eyes on it, and I forgot what they call it exactly, but anyway, that's kind of. But this.
Yeah, and we actually have here, so on our second floor up in the trustee area, we've got an area where we talk about some of the, they're not so much legends, but famous stories that are from here in Scott County. And one of them in particular is the Helenwood Devil, or the Scott County Devil. And we have a big giant poster of it. It's about a 4-foot tall poster. And essentially back in 1921, a gentleman named Cruz Sexton, he supposedly unearthed this giant devil out of a cave on his property. And so it gives the description of what the devil looked like. It had horns, it had this stone like body, it had teeth. It almost, when you look at it, because it's supposed to be male, but it's, got a feminine chest, so it almost looks like some type of fertility type god. But there's some really good pictures of it from 1921. And so they took it, they set it up at the Helenwood Depot here, and then they would charge people a quarter when the train would come, which a quarter back in 1921 was quite a bit of money. And
Mm-hmm.
so it ended up making its rounds. It went to a fair in Kentucky. It showed up at the World's Fair in 1982, and then it's not been seen since. And so people will come to Scott County to try to find the Helenwood Devil. And what's interesting too about that is the fact that, it's not been seen since. So it's either, some kind of really good hoax, which for 1921, having these pictures and having this giant structure or this giant being, it would have been a pretty elaborate hoax for that time. But, it's happened. So it could be. But I love finding little stories like that. And that's actually one of the more fascinating pieces that we have here at the museum, that a lot of people love hearing that story, because it's such a strange picture that we have up there.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And actually, when I first heard the story, I thought about going and doing a vlog on it, just
Mm-hmm.
because, again, it's just very fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those cryptids, that's kind of hidden. It's not like mainstream. It's just like one of those. Yeah, best way I can only put it. It's hidden.
Yeah, and because I know I was talking to a guy who is writing a book on Tennessee legends, and he's taken it from West Tennessee, Middle, and East Tennessee, and he's out of the Middle Tennessee area. He's actually not too far from the Lebanon area, and he was even telling me a story, and I'm trying to remember exactly what the road and the area was, but it was a white. Um, kind of cryptid monster like that. And when he was talking about the story, the sightings, they actually had a circus train derail in that area, and
Really.
so yeah, it ended up derailing, and so all of the sightings occurred around that same time. So they were thinking it either was just some type of sighting from this circus train derailing, or it was, some type of cryptid. So those stories are always super fascinating to me. We have a question here from Janet, who says she may have missed this, but how did you get the name the Dream Poet?
Actually, that is a very interesting story. How the name, or I no, yeah, how the moniker Dream Poet first started is back in 2012. I was really starting to open up about my artistic side, my creativity, and I was creating a Facebook page, calling it Dream Poet, and from there it just kind of stuck. And the more I had it, the more I just built off of it. And because I thought about maybe changing the name, but at the same time, it still fits kind of like that. Well, it still fits, the history versus, the mystery. For example, if you look at my logo, you'll see a humpback whale, going this way, and then well, anyway, going this way, and then you have an oarfish going this way. You know, the humpback whale is, you know, it represents wisdom. It represents, understanding. It represents, what is recorded. Peace. The oarfish, it represents mystery. It represents, what is misunderstood. Something that might seem, well, strange, but wholeheartedly it is natural. And of course, you see the anchor. The anchor represents the sailor's cross. Christian symbol. I'm a person of faith, and I kind of like the mix there, because it's almost like the what's the word? The astrological sign for Pisces.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I mean, I just think that's a cool idea. But anyway, that's how I got my logo. And for a time, living on a sailboat in Florida, the sea, they just kind of fit together. But
And while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and kind of pull up your site here. Um, you put out videos what once? Is it once a week?
yep, once every 5 days.
Okay. And as everyone can see, I mean, there's a wide variety of
A
of
lot.
videos. Yeah, and I like the length of them too. They're not so long that you're overwhelmed by them, but they give good information. And so since you've been back in Tennessee, you've been back what, since September, December?
September 6th is when I moved back. Actually, if you go down, the first video I made was the Telco Blockhouse,
Okay.
and that from there, I mean it just kind of like I said, you see like versus what I had in Florida to boom, but
And so let's talk a little bit about some of these. You've provided some images. I'm going to pull a couple of those up. Let's see here. Okay. So just bear with me, guys, for a second. Okay. So this was a fascinating one to me. And you and I had spoken just a little bit briefly about it before you were doing this one. Really, if you don't mind sharing, just the whole situation, even around filming it, was
oh,
interesting. It was such an interesting experience
mm,
and terrifying a little bit.
oh yes, definitely. Um, the best way to start this is a photo from the Benton fireworks disaster of 1983. Um, Prior to that, it was a beautiful spring day. The flowers are in bloom. Kids are about to get off from school. Well, there's a sheriff that stands outside in the middle of Benton. He's smoking a cigarette. He feels a giant explosion that just feels like a Category 5 earthquake, and it's shaking beneath his feet. In the distance, he sees a big cloud of smoke that's about 6 stories high. Pardon me. That's about 6 stories high, and he just knows that something is going to happen. So he goes out. He gets a call, and it takes him to Webb's Bait Farm, which is out on Welcome Valley Road. It's out in the middle of nowhere, and what he sees is just absolutely devastating. There are body parts everywhere. There's people screaming, and there's EMS. Like there's news stations. Everyone is crowding around this little dirt road in the middle of Polk County. And from what they found out, somebody, well, essentially what was going on this property, which just looked like a normal bait farm, it was an illegal fireworks operation. It was the largest catastrophe involving illegal manufacturing of fireworks in the entire United States history. Um, how it got started was Danley Webb. He had himself a bait shop, bait farm, and he got this idea. He was struggling financially, and this explosion, it cost him his wife. Well, no, his wife survived. It cost him the life of his mother, his father, and I think it was his. I mean, there was another family member that blew up in that. But His brother, from from what I've read in records, is that this explosion, he was out mowing the lawn, it actually threw him 200 yards, like about the size of a football field, and he's just laying out in the road. 30% of his body was burned. Luckily he survived, but anyway, that's the Benton fireworks disaster. And as you were saying, the scary side of it is, for whatever reason, the moment that I got on to what this property once was, by the way, it is a rafting outfitter now, but the energy in the air was just really, really heavy. Like it wasn't necessarily like evil, but it was like almost like a sign of warning. And I just thought it was like, well, maybe it's just, it's kind of sketchy, it's like, it's out in the middle of the country. Some people in that
Mm-hmm.
area of the country
Mm-hmm.
are very crazy. And I was like, well, I think it's time for me to leave. I got what I came for. Well, as I'm driving down Welcome Valley Road, I feel my passenger side jerk. And I thought this was absolutely strange. It pulled me over onto an embankment. I managed to pull myself back onto the road. Um, my truck fishtailed, and I flipped about 4 times.
Wow.
And luckily, I walked out unscathed. I walked out. Um, the worst things that I did have, well, I found this part out when my mother was giving me a ride home that night, is I had a bruise to my thigh, a really nasty bruise, and I'm just kind of I was picking at my head, and I was like, why does it hurt so much? Do I have brain bleed, or do I have some kind of concussion?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I push into it, and it's like, that is a piece of glass, and it ended
Wow.
up being a piece of glass about this big.
Wow.
That
Because I know that that particular day, because like I said, you and I had spoken before this one, because I hadn't heard about this incident, and for anyone that's not aware, Benton is, what is it, about maybe 30 minutes from Cleveland, if that,
Yep.
over toward Ocoee, and is it part of the national forest over there?
Yep.
Okay. And so, I mean, you had actually even invited me to come along and see, if there was any type of activity, or just to kind of do a collaboration. And unfortunately, to go that evening because I was traveling up here to Huntsville, and I was really blown away whenever I saw your post afterwards that you had flipped your truck 4 times and after going there. And I'm a superstitious person. So, there's certain places, if I'm investigating, I won't ride my motorcycle to, just because, it's like, okay, I judge by how I'm feeling. And that one has to make you wonder, just because I'm not a believer in coincidence. So just by the circumstances of how things happened, it's very odd.
Yep. I mean, I'm the same way. I mean, I believe in premonitions. I believe in dreams. I mean, it runs in my family. I
Hmm.
mean, I guess what are some of the examples, or at least that have happened? Well, this is kind of interesting. The night before, I had a dream that I was stuck on the side of the road and my truck was broke down. The day that this happens, I have my wreck.
Wow.
Another example, there was this one girl I liked when I was at UT, and well, I had a dream, and I mean, I just in my dream, I just saw that she had a gun to her head and she shot herself. And the next day, I'm talking to a friend of mine, and I find out that her grandfather had passed away that night before, the night that I had the dream.
Hmm.
So if you think about it, that can be interpreted as part of herself dying.
True, true.
And crap, what are some other things that actually, I know this is going to sound weird. It'd probably make a Tennessee football fan proud, but it was the 2016 season. We like Tennessee was not doing well whatsoever. I went to bed that night, and in my dream, I imagined Tennessee beating Georgia. As I'm walking from my dorm room to get something to eat, I hear the fireworks going off, and I'm like, "What the hell?" Anyway, and I just keep hearing them going off, boom, 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 and I'm like, "No freaking way!" I got on the internet, I looked on Google, and I'm like, "Holy crap! Tennessee is beating them by 20." And well, then there's another example. Let me see. There was another one that they said that they weren't going to beat. That I had a very same thing, and then I had a dream about Alabama, and well, in my dream, I just woke up and I felt like it could go either way. Tennessee in the 2016 season, they almost beat them. I mean, so it's like, I believe in, I'm a full believer in premonition, in dreams, just because it's just like, or I've had dreams where, there's somebody I've never met whatsoever,
Mm-hmm.
but I am in my dream, I have smelled like the smell, I have the smell, you know, kind of like, how the person, moves. Wait, what is,
Whoops.
anyway, um, the feelings, the smells, the moves, and 3 days later, I've met the same person. It's so weird.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
honestly, like I said, I mean, I think I do have, oh, what's, it's either being an empath or, oh, what is it? It's not like omniscient, it's something else. It's like where somebody once told me that they felt that I was a prophet or some or not really a prophet, but the word would not be a prophet. It would be some kind of someone prophesying. What will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I mean, it's like I've just had so many times, like in my, like even when I was a kid, like I mean, I remember as a kid, I remember I had a dream and my mom was pregnant, and like not even a week later, I found out that my mom was pregnant with my sister. I mean, so actually, there's another interesting story with this too. This is something we need to talk about since this is. Sorry.
Yeah, so Leon is a dogs fan. And Leon is actually he's going to be my guest on next week as well. We'll be talking just a quick plug for next week. We'll be talking about demonology. So and
Oh,
we'll get to that here in a little bit, but definitely have to tune in for Leon next week. We will not be talking about the dogs. Just going to put that out there.
go Gators.
Anyways, so um yeah, so please go on.
Okay, but anyway, I guess, and there's another thing that I mean, I'll have like these. What's the word? I mean, I'll look at somebody, and I mean, for whatever reason, I just get this really weird feeling that I just know what they're going through. Like, I
Mhm.
mean, for example, when
And that
I,
sounds very empathic.
I mean, it's just like it hits me like I said, hit me in the back of the head moment. Um, like when I was training for Ghost Augustine. By the
Mhm.
way, it's one of the greatest ghost tours that you can go to in the city of St. Augustine. I The lady who was training me, I think she was maybe, oh, what is it? She was maybe like 200 feet away from me, and it was like catching a whiff of something. Like, I mean, I just got this weird feeling in my gut that she was not doing that well. She was feeling rather sickly.
Mhm.
And that's when she came up to me and she didn't want to talk. She was very drained, and I found out that her her blood sugar was really low, and apparently, I mean, I just got this really weird feeling that something was going on with, like, I mean, I know, like, I guess maybe, like, I guess, I think her and her husband, well, ex-husband, I should say, just because I noticed that she was having to step to the side with her phone, and
Mhm.
she looked like she had been crying. And her son, her son was with her. Bleh, she was with her son. There we go. Which, I mean, I feel like I kind of hit the nail on the head when I found out that ex-husband, trying to use, her kids as something to hold over her head, and I'm just like, oh my god, wow.
I guess sometimes the things you find out when you are intuitive or empathic or whatever, um, whichever the case may be. I mean, you can. It's kind of it's draining, but it's also it's interesting sometimes the things that that people don't always know.
Hmm. Yep.
Um, so let's see. A couple of the other images that you've sent. Um, I know this ties
Uh,
into another fascinating vlog. A lot of people, again,
mhm.
we were talking about the Civil War and all of that history that's there in the Cleveland, Charleston, Chattanooga areas. The Native American activity,
Oh,
and I mean, and so this was. Let's see, is it how is it they say it? The Chate? How it's
actually,
pronounced?
that's probably the proper pronunciation. But when I made this vlog, like
Mhm.
in particular, I came to a very rude awakening from the locals. There's like three different pronunciations, or for chat, or well,
It
for
looks
Chitata.
like Chitata, right? Or
Yep,
Chatta.
yep. One pronunciation is Chatta. Or another pronunciation is Shady, and of course, what the locals around here, the local old timers around here would describe or quote or say it as Chitata. They get kind
Okay.
of mad when you say Chitata. I learned that the hard way. But anyway, what the Shady Wall, Chatta Wall, is in 1895. Isaac Hooper is looking for foundation stones to build his mill. As he's looking, he comes across the ridge right next to the Hiwassee River. He finds this wall, or actually, I should say, he finds a rock sticking out of the ground. He leans down to pick it up, and he notices that on this particular rock there are, well, inscriptions written in the rock. What he does is he starts to dig, and he finds out that this is a wall that is about 2,000 feet long, stands about maybe 2.5 feet high, and about 2 feet thick. And it's a 3 ply high of rock. But
See,
it,
you've got the rock, don't you? I think you sent that to me, didn't you?
yep.
Okay,
Now,
I'll pull that up too.
and there's actually an interesting story about this particular piece that was found. Um, but anyway, 1895, Isaac Cooper, he brings down somebody from the Smithsonian. They take it back with them, and actually, if you can believe it, a piece of this stone will be on display at the Smithsonian Institution for for about 2 years, and then its authenticity is questioned, and it gets sent back to Isaac Cooper. Um, but then a few years later, you have, I think it was 1898, I think. You had a gentleman. He was a professor from New York. He was down here in Cleveland. He was traveling, and as he's sitting at a bar in this hotel, he finds out from a group of locals that there's this mysterious wall with these mysterious etchings. He spends another night. He goes out to Isaac Cooper's farm. Isaac Cooper takes him to the ridge where this mysterious wall is. And then, well, he takes this rock. He sends it back up to New York to be reinscribed. It cost him about $30,000 at the time, which
Wow.
18, it's an absurd amount of money even in today's standards. But he didn't know what it was, and what he got back absolutely astounded him, and what caused a frenzy that brought archaeologists, historians, for about maybe 5 years to Cleveland, Tennessee, and it was on the world centered, on the world center stage. There we go. But these mysterious etchings were well determined to be Hebrew or Paleolithic Hebrew. During this time, you had a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses. You had a lot of people believing, that two of the lost tribes of Israel, were in North America. Well, this particular piece of evidence suggested that, or at least some kind of ancient race that was going extinct. This particular rock right here, this was found by Nathan King and John Galley. I think they're currently still working on a documentary on it, but that's just some of the pieces that he found when he was out there.
Wow. And let's see here. Just checking to see. Sorry, I have to pull things off the screen and then pull it back on. For some reason, it opens in a new window, so I have to share. I have to share it one at a time.
Oh, it's all right. Again, another example from that was, well, now this interesting story of how the Shady Wall. Gotta watch my P's and my Q's. How the Shady Wall was rediscovered was in the winter. I believe it was the winter of 2007. No, it's either the winter of 2017 and it was either the winter of 2017 or the winter of 2018. No, it was the winter of 2018. Well, Nate and John, they do stumble, like they look at the descriptions and the historical records and what the property looks like now, and they were able to pinpoint where the wall was, and they did actually find a portion of the wall. But that portion of the wall sits on private property, and yeah. But still, other than that, I mean, it's something that rivals that of the what is it? It's Judicola Rock. Judicola, the Judicola Giant.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I believe rivals that. But
and isn't it in like a subdivision now, or weren't they building a subdivision there in that area?
Yep. I mean, or at least that's where Isaac Cooper's farm did sit, and historical records say that that it did sit somewhere on his property. So it has to be somewhere in that area, not far from the Hiwassee River.
Okay. Again, just a lot of stuff there in Cleveland. I know my house is not too far from the subdivision that has right in the middle of the subdivision. It's got the big Indian mound. Do you know the one I'm talking about?
Yep.
Yeah, I've wanted to pull off there and go up there because I mean I'm literally like just down from there, and it's quite wild to drive into this subdivision and you've got this line of houses all around, and then this like Indian mound right there. Have they recovered artifacts from that? Do you know?
I think they have. I mean, if we're talking about the same one, I mean, I remember like kind of like I guess from one Clevelander to another. It's like, you're coming down the hill, you see, what is it? You see the McDonald's, and then you see, like where it's not far from Westwood Baptist Church.
Yes.
They were going to originally build that road like all the way into the next roadway,
Mm-hmm.
but with that mound being there, they couldn't do that. Otherwise, you're talking about, getting in trouble with the Cherokee Nation and opening up a can of worms that you don't want to open.
Exactly. And D Hoot asks, what year was this initially done?
Oh, what for the Shady Wall?
Yeah.
1895.
Okay.
But
And I'm going to see if there's anything I've missed here. Is that letting me change? It's letting me change the image now. It's going to just scroll through. You had mentioned not to, and there's the bait farm, not to jump topic, but you were talking about St. Augustine when you were there, and then also, when you moved back here, because I know a lot of the stories that you cover yourself now seem to be more historical in nature, whether they be based on the Civil War or the old communities, old ghost towns, that sort of thing. I know you cover a lot of that history in sort of a historical journalism sort of way. When you were in Florida, did you actually do paranormal investigations, or were you more of sort of a paranormal historian?
to be honest, I did the investigative based tour. The particular tour in question is the HSA Haunted St. Augustine. What it is, we would take people out in groups of usually about 12 to 13. We would take them to these locations in St. Augustine where there is just an absolute ocean of activity, no pun intended. Um, One of the really, really strange things well, that just always seemed to be so bizarre to me is that, of all things, it was a parking lot. Like, when we would enter that particular area, everyone's K2 meters would just go off like crazy. Like, there's no electricity in that spot. There's no power lines because I did have a, sorry, I had lost total train of thought. I had an electrician that was on my ghost tour. They were from Venice, Florida, and he told me that this is not possible. Like, I am absolutely baffled by what's going on right now. Pretty much his exact words. But anyway, on this ghost tour, everybody would be given a K2 meter, but every single K2 meter would go off in this spot. And there are two stories that go along with why this goes on. The first one is quite simply it's a ley line. There's just a lot of energy in that spot, and it's enough to set the K2s off. The other story that goes along with this um, is that in that spot, I think it was around the 1850s, like about the 1850s, 1820s, kind of in that area. There was of all things, there was a root worker, worker. Um, Her name was Miss Minnie Dean. She, anyway, she practiced hoodoo as well. Um, Now, St. Augustine, throughout its existence, even going all the way back to 1513, it has been predominantly Catholic. And anything witchcraft related is highly looked down upon in the city. Well, the reason why they let Minnie Dean or Miss Minnie Dean practice her hoodoo is because, as I've already stated, she was a root worker. She helped. She helped sick people. She helped, those who weren't doing that well. And why we believe that there's just that kind of energy there. It's just the energy left over from when she practiced.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, so let's see. Just going to see if there was
Oh, but anyway, about that nice little orb that you see there. There's actually another very interesting story about that one, but I'm not sure if. Or wait, were you going to say something? Or
No, I was just like I said, just kind of going through the pictures you sent. I was down in St. Augustine in the summer of 2019, and was down there, uh, I did a live with an SLS camera. Of course, the cemeteries were closed there, except for with the tours and the walks. But I ended up doing a dowsing rod and dowsing rod and SLS camera session there at one of the cemeteries through the bars, and it was quite interesting. I mean, just being in that town, um, it has its own energy and feel to it. I mean, just it's definitely a charged area.
yep, very much actually. But well, as I say, very much. Um, like for example, this photo that you have right here, like you have like these two photos that are
Hmm.
both side by side, taken
Hmm.
not even a second from one another. It's
Hmm.
like you have that, but then you have like a very like I'm not like, is that an orb or is that a? To me, it looks like an orb, but there's too much going on there. I mean, I'm not sure if you would have an idea of what.
I would definitely be interested in taking that picture and kind of running some tests on it to, see um, how it reacts. Because it's a very interesting picture to me.
Hmm. But I
Um,
but
no, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say there's also a lot of other interesting stories that have happened to me while being a tour guide for St. Augustine or for Ghost Augustine. By the way, that's Ronnie Van Zant's first grave site, but we'll talk about that here in a moment.
Okay.
Um, but I guess one of the biggest things that when I hear people say like, "Oh, by the way, perfect example of orb activity," like right there near the bottom corner, you can see them right there. But
Right in.
yep. But anyway, probably one of the like I often hear people say like, "Dude, if I saw that, I would never go back. I would be so scared." For me, it's like I'm desensitized to it now. Like the only way I'd ever get scared is if I feel that specific energy that says you need to leave.
Right. Was
But
it pretty active, most nights when you all did your tours?
yes, like
I would
there,
believe that.
like I mean, there is something that always goes on, like paranormal wise. There's something that like actually this is a really fun fact for St. Augustine is that you are never within 5 feet of a body or like an unmarked grave in the city because well there's that much death in the city.
Wow.
But going back to what like the weirdest thing that I've ever experienced is we like it was at Ghost Augustine. We have ourselves what we call a shotgun house,
Mhm.
or in other words, a Florida cracker house. During the days of settlement. Um, it was in the poorer side of town. And, you had a lot of sickness, a lot of death, and anyway, it's my night. I'm training. We go into the house. I'm shown, kind of what there is to do. And in this one particular room, which we call the Wild West room, excuse me, I look at the very far end, and sitting in this wooden chair is a black mass. It is sitting there. It is looking right back at me. I say, I don't know if I'm really seeing what I'm seeing. I'm just going to walk away. Well, the moment that I did that, you had a group with the Total Paranormal. It's like a 2 hour long investigation of that house.
Mhm.
Um, they have an SLS camera. They peered into the Wild West room, and in that chair, It spits out a stick figure. I was like, okay, now this is going to be a very fun job. Um, and also another example, I saw another shadow figure, and that time you've probably heard of it. It's the Pinehurst San Sebastian Cemetery. It's a Haitian slave cemetery from the 1700s. It's very rich in voodoo history. Um, I remember that night when I was there, like there was this. At first, I was like, because what it looked like is it looked like, it looked human, like human like, but it would be at the far end of the cemetery. But the closer that I would walk up to it, it would get much, much closer, like within the blink of an eye. And it's just like the more I would walk away, the more it would push itself away. But the more that I would come closer, it was like if it was mirroring me.
Mirroring, yeah.
And anyway, that's another time. And there's actually another good example. This is a full body apparition that, if we can
Let's
find
see.
it. Yep, you see in the far corner right there.
I think I'm seeing. You're talking about on the left-hand side?
Yep, you see it.
Yeah.
Looks like a nun.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a very interesting story about this location. In St. Augustine's history, this used to be the old nunnery. Present day, it is a private Catholic school. Before then, back when St. Augustine was being colonized, the Spaniards, you had it wasn't De Soto, Juan Ponce de Leon. Juan Ponce de Leon was in that area, and anyway, when they started colonizing St. Augustine, well, you had the burial grounds of the Timucuan Indians. What the Spanish did is what the colonists did is they built over the sacred burial sites of the Timucuan Indians.
Oh,
Um, yeah, again, you're opening up a can of worms.
yeah.
And this is kind of where I believe that these entities may have just been messing with us, or they didn't like that we were there. But I remember it's like I'd break out this. Oh, there was another thought, but oh yeah. But anyway, I'd break out my spirit box, and like we would always get some kind of response. Like I remember, I asked like how are you doing, and we got like plain as day, good. I'm like okay, and then you could also hear it say then now leave. I'm like okay, that's a sign that we need to leave. Um, Another example, again, this is why I quit Ghost Augustine, but we have kept really good ties. I love Jonas to death. I love John. Great, I consider good, good former coworkers, good friends.
Hmm.
Um, but it's like, but I would hear like these, like I'd get these really, really distorted voices coming on the other end, and they didn't sound human.
Mm.
And that's when I kind of started noticing all these really weird things happening, like on my boat, on the job site. It's as if, it had made some kind of connection. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to mess with that.
How long did you do it before you ended up having all of that happen and walk away?
I would probably say about 5 months.
Okay.
And it was about a month and a half that I finally started acknowledging it. And I went to my truck. I remember this plain as day. I had bought some sage. I said the Lord's Prayer like 7 different times. And as I did this, as I was praying, it was like this light bulb. I mean, I guess this is, I guess for anybody, who has, that might have something that's trying to attach itself or has, it just feels like light bulbs going, just popping, and you just feel like empty headed, like you feel good, but there's like no thought, in your head, in your brain, there is only elevator music. There we go.
So did you have experiences with the paranormal before, or have an interest in it before you started there
Oh,
with Ghost Augustine, or
that,
was it just kind of just a happenstance thing that?
oh no, the interest for me in the paranormal goes all the way back to my interest in it as a child. Some of the things that I would experience, like again, this goes back to all the way to me being a child, hearing all these ghost stories from my family in Cleveland, and going to St. Augustine as a kid and hearing all the ghost stories. I mean, I'd probably say maybe right around 11 years old for me, I was like, I want to go ghost hunting. But with some of my family, it's like, no, no, you don't want to mess with it. It'll follow you. And well, what I've come to learn, yes, but the odds of an entity following you is what, like,
It's a lot slimmer than TV wants you to think. I mean, it does happen. It does happen, but it's not as common as as what the entertainment shows want you to think.
yep,
And especially if you're in an area like St. Augustine, just as active as it is, and then being in the type of job where not only are you in a very active area, but you're also immersed in it with your job. I think that it can kind of be a more common thing in that sense, especially since you're opening up, or since if they know you communicate with them and can see them and hear them, you could be more of a beacon or a magnet that could draw certain hitchhikers or wandering spirits along with you.
yep. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I know we'd pulled up the picture a few minutes ago. D Hoot asks, "Did something happen at Ronnie Van Zant's grave?"
Yes, there is a very good story with that.
Let's see. Let me
Very,
find that here.
okay. This is a very interesting story. You see, this goes back to actually the last few days that I was living in Florida. And in the 2.5, 3 years that I'd been living there, I never knew or not Led Zeppelin, Leonard Skinner was from Jacksonville. I had no clue. I thought, they were from like Mississippi or Alabama. No, my boss at the time, I'm working at Take 5 Oil Change in Florida. Um, he tells me, well, if you visited, Tom Petty's childhood home, why don't you go to the Van Zant childhood home? And I'm like, that's in my backyard. But anyway, I start doing my research. I'm like, holy crap, it has been here under my nose this whole time. I get another smack in the back of the head. But anyway, to talk about what happened with Ronnie Van Zant's grave, um, you see, of course, the plane crash,
Mhm.
Gillespie, I think it's Gillsburg, Gillespie, Mississippi, um, Steve Gaines, Ronnie Van Zant, and Cassie Gaines, they die in the plane crash. Well, Ronnie Van Zant, his body is brought back to Jacksonville, and he is buried in Jacksonville Memorial Gardens. Not long after this, you have two morons from town that get into an argument on whether Ronnie Van Zant was buried with a Neil Young shirt. So
Oh
what,
God.
what these idiots do in the middle of the night, they get behind Ronnie Van Zant's casket or his crypt. They crack open the concrete and they manage to get half his casket out. Yeah, Florida people are crazy. Um, and also, they managed to do the same thing to Steve Gaines and his ashes. They managed to get a little bit of them. Not, I mean, but after that, Ronnie's body was reinterred at, actually, there for about 6 months. the family would not disclose where he was reburied, but he was buried at Riverside Memorial Gardens, which it's on the west side of Jacksonville. The west side of Jacksonville is not necessarily the fun side of Jacksonville. Um, but for 6 months, no, family doesn't, disclose anything, and that's when people find out that Ronnie was buried next to his parents at Riverside. So that's the story with Ronnie Van Zant's grave. Is he has this beautiful crypt, but he's not buried in the crypt anymore.
Wow. I didn't know that. See, just fascinating stuff. And like I said, I'm gonna look and make sure there's nothing else I'm missing. I think you included a video here. See if I can get that to play. I'll have to stop sharing and pull that up, and then we'll probably have to wrap things up here shortly. But again, a lot of the stuff you've covered, as far as covering the ghost towns, covering the ghost stories, and then also the Civil War, the Native American. I really enjoyed the stories that you covered from the Chattanooga National Cemetery. What is the YouTube channel the best place to check you out? Because I know I see your stuff all over Facebook, all over the Tennessee groups, but what's the best place that folks can find your stuff?
That would be under going on to YouTube. Well, you can find me on YouTube at, of course, Dream Poet, but then I've also got Dream Poet Media LLC on my Facebook page, and then you've got Chet Guthrie 4 on as my Instagram. But you can find me in those 3 different places.
Okay, and I'm gonna pull up. Let me see if
there's actually a very interesting. Yes.
Okay, so I have to unshare it just because I have to make sure I put the audio with it. Let's see here.
But actually, well, as you're waiting on that, I do want to share. What was it? Oh yeah, I know I talked to you about it previously, but in our little small town of Cleveland, there is a tie between the Warren family and Cleveland. Like, anyway, but one second. Sorry, I'll put the phone down. But real quick, before this wonderful piece of evidence is shared, it was I had just posted my apartment video telling the ghost story about my best friend and what he had experienced. But there's this lady in the comments that starts telling me that as a child, her family lived in a haunted house. I thought that was, quite common, quite interesting. I started asking her a little bit more, and that's when she tells me that long before 25th Street had ever been built, long before I-75 was there, when Vista Drive was still a dirt road with a big giant turnaround and one house in the neighborhood, her family experienced some absolutely terrifying activity. Some of the things that they would experience, some of the things that they would experience is they would see a lot of, what do you call it? They would see a lot of shadows. They would hear a lot of growling. They would see, poltergeist activity, things being flung at them from across the room. And it got so bad for this family that, anyway, the Warren family, Ed and Lorraine Warren, they are making their way down south. This is before they ever became famous, but they were giving a presentation at Cleveland State Community College, and there is a Cleveland Daily Banner, a Cleveland Daily Banner article on this. But right after the Warrens give their presentation. This family comes up to the Warrens, and Lorraine, well, this young lady and her mother starts telling them about what the experience that they had on this property. And Lorraine says, "Oh, yes, that's what I've been sensing this whole time. You need to get out of that house. There's too much negativity there." And and I mean, you're talking about, one of the most prolific paranormal investigators of this century, telling this family from Cleveland, Tennessee, that they need to get out. But
Do you know what they were doing their presentation at Cleveland State on? I mean, I'm sure it was probably something demonology, but do you know anything on that? Have you been able to find any history on that?
no, not since the Cleveland Daily Banner decided to, oh, what is it? They switched,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like, yeah, you can't, like, I interned at the Banner, for like 3 months, back when I was in school. I can't
Mhm.
even look at my own, my own stories anymore.
Oh.
It's like, this sucks.
Well, I remember you reaching out to me and asking if I had heard anything about Ed and Lorraine coming down to Cleveland, and I hadn't heard anything about it. So that's interesting. I would love to know more about what they were, doing their presentation on, who they were speaking with there at the college, if they were speaking specifically to a class, or if it was something that the public could go to, what they were talking about. That's an interesting tie. And so, do you know any more about the home or the area?
As far as like I can tell, this is why I think, like, because there is actually another instance with my best friend. He and his family lived on Vista Drive, and they had the same activity happen. From what I can tell, is that again, this is the same lady. I was told that there are portals on this particular, parcel of land. There are portals. There's something. This is why I think maybe it's Native American related,
Mhm.
just because, for example, St. Augustine, Florida, where, the old city is now, the Timucun Indians, that was, their land, and what they described that land to be like is they considered it almost magical. There was
Mhm.
an energy about it. So, who's to say that, maybe on this hill in Cleveland, Tennessee, that became Vista Drive, it was sacred to the Cherokee Nation, and something may have gone awry to cause the land to go sour.
Mhm. Well, I mean, it's a something that I've commonly heard of elementals in the area, just because of red clay and the Cherokee National Forest, the Blue Hole, um, even so far up to the Tennessee, Virginia, Glade Springs area. Just the whole routes that were being taken. I've actually heard several different people talk about elementals in those areas. So, I mean, I think that's very possible.
Hmm. Oh, oh, definitely.
Did they ever do any? Did they ever investigate the house or go to it, or did they just have the conversation with the lady?
Just the conversation with the lady.
Okay. Okay.
But like I said, when I found that out, I was like, you always hear, like, these really, really weird ties with Cleveland.
Hmm.
Yeah, this was another one that was a notch in the belt. It's just like, okay. But anyway, but I digress. But
No, it's an interesting fact. I remember having the conversation with you when you had asked me if I had heard anything about that, and I hadn't. So, but being that I'm not a native there, I'm finding out that there's a whole lot I don't know. That I'm always interested to see the videos, hear the stories and stuff. Because again, with just the history in that area. So, does your video take place in Cleveland or
oh, which one?
the one that I've got pulled up here?
Oh, this
Um,
is actually, this is again from my best friend who
okay.
but I just thought, since it's a lot of it is predominantly normal, this one may actually be a relative you might find pretty interesting, and everyone else on here.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start that. I've got the sound going, so do you want to set it up before I start it?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit more on it. I was trying to fall asleep one night, and my best friend sends me a message saying my spook is acting up again. And I'm like, yeah, right. I'm watching the video, and clearly, plain as day, this Cheez-It box is moving. And I'm like,
Okay.
okay, I guess he maybe wanted some Cheez-Its.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start it.
Like right around here, you can start seeing it move a little bit. Right there. Yeah, it's moving.
Wow.
And again, this video can be found, like the full video can be found on Dream Poet as well. Here we go.
Huh. Was it a full box?
Mm-hmm. Like full to the brim Cheez-Its.
Okay. Because I was going to say it doesn't look open.
I mean,
It doesn't.
but,
And there was no kind of draft or anything?
nope. I mean, that's the thing, like, it's one of those things, I guess.
Wow.
So yeah, Miranda, if, well, like I said, there are a few places in Cleveland that, let's collab on. I mean, actually, speaking of the apartment that my friend was living in, I did find out from him what actually happened. But in this particular apartment, apparently, well, he had a premonition that somebody had killed someone. And what
Okay.
he felt was that there was a gentleman who killed his wife. No,
Wow.
something was not alive in the box. But anyway, but he told me that there was a guy who killed his wife, and he tells this to the landlord, Caesar, and Caesar gets real curious. He looks at it, looks through records, and he sees where back in the 1970s, a man had killed his wife in that house, first floor, in the kitchen area.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, again, my best friend's sixth sense is very, yeah. He, anyway, that's another conversation.
So is that in the historic district?
Actually, okay, you know where Eminem oh God, that sounds like a typical Clevelander. Okay, you know where Eminem Mars is at? Okay.
Wow, that's really rocking there.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's you live in Cleveland when. But it's up on a hill. You go, it's like Crestview Road. It's kind of like an older neighborhood. Um,
Okay.
but anyway, it was an older house that was built in 1963 that was later converted into a quadplex.
Okay.
But anyway, like in this particular apartment, whatever was in there was, it would growl at my best friend. It would, well, it would like to kind of like take things, it would hide them, and they would reappear at totally different parts of the house. And, oh, excuse me. I started worrying about my friend one night. He woke up at like, I think it was like, he either said 2 or 3 in the morning, and he found like his really expensive kitchenware knife laying at the foot of his bed.
Wow. No, that's creepy.
So, like I said,
Disturbing.
whatever was in that house was well, point blank malevolent.
Yeah.
It was not. It was not a friendly entity. There was
Did they ever have anyone investigate it?
no, but that's why I say it's like I'm still kind of familiar with Caesar. I think I can convince him. Well, like I said, I've kind of taken my sabbatical from investigating just because what I dealt with at Ghost Augustine.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just curious to see what you would probably come back with. Kind of like
Get me
well,
in there and we'll find out.
I mean, it's like it kind of makes me wonder about when you did the episode of the House on
Sunset Hill.
Sunset Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's like again, somebody fudged up with a Ouija board, and now there's just literally. Well, I'm glad that the family has gotten it under control because
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that house was unlike anything I've ever experienced before. And just, and probably will never experience anything like that again. I don't feel that that's something that comes around that often, but I've heard other investigators and other folks talk about some of the things they've experienced it. And I would be skeptical had I not been in one myself and seen how the activity was. I would be like, well, could it be this or this? But, it's one of those situations until you're in it yourself and having the personal experiences and really essentially kind of getting this connection with those spirits. I feel like you can't fully appreciate, and there's, like I said, it's unlike anything I've experienced. So, yeah, if I would be, I'd be happy to check that out.
Well, like I said, I mean, I'll hit Caesar up and we'll see what happens. Because, like I said, actually, this is another interesting thing about that particular apartment. Yes, this is a real pine cone.
Wow.
It's a Coulter pine. They typically, God, my ADHD is coming out horrible. Um, but anyway, to go back to the apartment. Where was I going with that thought? Um, you know, I guess it's one of those things. I'm just very, I don't know, lost my train of thought. But anyway, again, the video can be found on. Oh yeah, actually, this is an interesting story that happened to me. This was like near the end of my friend living in that particular apartment.
Mm-hmm.
He anyway, we had ourselves a bit of a New Year's Eve party. Everyone had gone to bed at 4 a.m. in the morning. Like, no joke, Miranda, I wake up and I feel like this, whatever it was, it must have stood at least maybe 8 feet tall, 7. I mean, it just felt like it stood like way over me, and I could hear it breathing, but it just didn't. I was afraid to look up. I'll say that much. Like, you can feel that something's there, you can hear it, but no,
Wow.
no. But anyway, yeah, it should be an interesting experience.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So what else is coming up for you? And like I said, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here, but anything you want to promote or anything that's coming up people need to be on the lookout for?
Um, well, of course, be looking forward to this upcoming video tomorrow morning. It's all the Civil War locations in Cleveland. Um, Actually, I'm kind of thinking where I am working currently, I'm only like 30 minutes down the road from the South Pittsburgh Hospital. I
Mhm.
figure, I'd talk about the experience or my first real paranormal experience that I ever said, I'm never going back here. And I'm pretty sure you've investigated Old South
I have.
Pittsburgh.
Great
And
place, great location.
uh-uh, no bueno. No, it's like whatever is in that hospital had it out for me. Like I left that building like nauseous, lightheaded, and yeah, I had like 4 people praying over me. It was no bueno. No
Wow.
bueno at all. But anyway,
Wow.
that's another thing. And also, I will be doing another collaboration on a Civil War video. Well, it's a Civil War convention in Georgia with Mr. Nomad Ben. I guess that's just some of the things that we looking out for in the next
And
couple
do
of
your
weeks.
videos release a specific day? I know you said you do them each week. Do you do it on a specific day or?
Usually I gear it like every 5 days. Like
Okay.
if you notice, like I probably need to get like an actual schedule, but it's every 5 days, from one to another. Um, but that's usually how I do it. But
Okay.
but once I reach, say 1,000 subs, I'm probably gonna have to have something that's a little more concrete. But
Gotcha. Yeah, you'll have to do some lives at that point from those locations, some of the live vlogs. But guys, y'all in the chat room, thank you so much. Go over, check out the Dream Poets page, Chet Guthrie. It's got some great content. Catch up on what you've not seen. Look forward to what's coming out. And I think you'll really enjoy it. Got something for everybody, history and paranormal and mystery as well. So, but thank you all so much in the chat room for spending your time with us tonight. We went a little bit longer, but it was a great discussion. So I love it when that happens. And thank you, Chet, for taking the time to chat with us and share your stories. We'll have to have you come back at another date whenever you've got more videos out and more great stories to share with us. As I said a little while ago, next week I've got demonologist Leon Wilkes, who's going to be on here with me, and we're going to kind of be diving deep into the ever so controversial topic of demonology. And so I know he's got a lot of really great things to share with us. I have worked with Brother Leon in the past, and so it's been a real interesting experience being able to work with him on a case. And so and like I said, he's going to be sharing a lot of really interesting stuff that you may or may not know about the controversial topic of demonology, and just kind of looking forward because we've got a full calendar booked. Um, after let's see, the week after that, I'm going to have Barry Gaunt from Octagon Hall. He's going to be coming on and sharing
nice.
some wonderful stories from Octagon Hall, another great Civil War location in Franklin, Kentucky. And then I will have the week after that Brian Cantu, and he's got some great stories as well from Tombstone, Billy the Kid. We're going to be going out west for that one. So, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and check out the historic Scott County Jail calendar page, and come do a ghost hunt with us at the end of the month. We've got, we would love it. The spirits here would love it, and I think you'll enjoy it as well. So, anyways, until next week or until before then, everyone stay warm, stay safe, and stay blessed.